So I'm going to dive right in. We only have about 30 minutes because our programmers are constantly on the move during the festival, as we all are. But today's really informal gathering was meant to just kind of lay the foundation for what will be a series of daily talks throughout the festival. And for this one, we thought it would be just nice for a moment to sit and not only take a few questions from you, which we'll be doing in just a moment, and there will be microphones on either side, to give you a sense of this year's festival. And we're also recording this conversation so that we can share it with our audience digitally for those who are attending the festival over the course of the next 2 weeks. So let me start by introducing my colleagues seated to my right. The director of the New York Film Festival and the head of the selection committee, Mr. Kent Jones. As well as two colleagues who are on the selection committee and will have a lot of insights to share with us on some of the films that we'll be seeing here at the festival this week. Mr. Dennis Lim and Ms. Marion Massoni, welcome. And
I feel like I'm on the judging panel for Project Runway.
Yes, right? And so Amy Taubin is also expected to join us. She's probably running from another screening Q&A and trying to get over here. So as soon as she gets here, we'll have a seat for assuming she's able to make it. But again, this conversation not only meant for those in the room, but those who might be listening on our podcast at home or watching this feed or this video in subsequent days. I thought maybe, Kent, that we could start by you kind of laying the foundation, because at the office, in any number of interviews that you've done over the past few weeks, you've talked about the festival and its history and kind of contextualized it. But I think for the audience of people here who go see movies and those, again, listening in on this podcast who will be deciding what to see over the next 2 weeks, just lay the foundation for us. Explain to us what the mission and mandate of the New York Film Festival is, and maybe how it's a little bit unique among the sort of other festivals that we sort of know about in the world.
The mission and mandate of the festival is very clear and very simple, which is that we choose the best films. Let's say the number has varied over the years, but it's more or less within the main slate between 25 and 30, the best films from around the world within that calendar year. And then as of about 3 years ago, we decided that we would have world premieres in 3 of the slots. Now we do them in 2 of the slots. And it really hasn't deviated. So you could say, in theory, that that's the mission of most film festivals. But the thing is that we don't have any prizes. We don't have any juries. We have us, the selection committee, choosing the films, and we're going by instinct and talking, and then deciding on what the final lineup is going to be. And then the basis on which we're going is what I just said. I think that what makes it different maybe is that the festival has grown bigger, but it's grown bigger in a very organic way, which means that when this building, when I first started at the Film Society of Lincoln Center, when Marion and I were here in the 90s, this building didn't exist. It was a garage, right? It always seemed like, the festival should perhaps grow a little bigger by adding, retrospectives, some more revivals, room for more documentaries, but only if it made sense. So the festival used to be only in Alice Tully Hall. Then there was some stuff that was shown at the Walter Reed. But then when the Film Center was built, organically it grew larger, and that was under Richard Pena's tenure. And so, in essence, that's a great thing. And it means that we've been able to fill things out a little bit, but still stick to the mission.
Well, one of my goals in this talk may sound funny, but it's to kind of humanize these names that people see as programmers of this festival. So folks certainly know your names and see you introducing films every night, but maybe as a way to kind of start that humanization process, I'd love to hear from each of the 3 of you. Dennis is laughing and Marion's like, what? I'd love to hear about your first experience with the New York Film Festival. Do you remember the first time you came to a film at the New York Film Festival, and just kind of paint a picture of what that experience was like, what it meant to you?
I've been here longer than probably, well,
Anybody?
some people in this room have been alive, I'm sure. Anyway, and I've been at the Film Society of Lincoln Center for many, many, many years, since 1984. But my first New York Film Festival was actually probably the year before, when I was just working at Lincoln Center. But here's one of my first fabulous memories of being at the New York Film Festival. There was a screening, was it a retrospective screening of Vertigo, I think? And I was coming out of Alice Tully Hall, the very old Alice Tully Hall, and there was an exiting on the side street on 65th Street, and I was all by myself, and all of a sudden, after the Q&A, out another door, just a few feet away from me, was James Stewart and his wife. They just sort of walked out the door and were standing there by themselves, waiting for a car to come. And they'd obviously just done a Q&A for the film. And it was just this wonderful moment of what I think about the New York Film Festival way back when. It was like, here's a filmmaker, here's a star, but they're just here, and we can go up and you can talk to them, and talking about the films. They're as excited about the films as you were. It was just this wonderful, wonderful moment.
Well,
That's my first memory.
we maintain that informal kind of nature, and I won't single the person out, but there's a filmmaker who has a film in the main slate of this year's festival who's sitting in the audience today. And I wasn't going to point him out, not to embarrass him. But Dennis, tell us about an early encounter with the New York Film Festival.
As a child,
Dennis. Why did you say humanization process? Okay.
Go ahead, Dennis.
It was in the mid '90s. I actually don't remember. I was trying to think what year it was. It might have been the year that Secrets and Lies opened the film festival, which was 96. 96. Yeah. I was a critic before I was a full-time programmer, and I covered the festival for many years. I think that was the first year I attended as a sort of civilian freelance critic, and then covered it for many years. I don't really... yes, I did.
Question was if Dennis Lim, you wrote for the Times for many years.
I worked at the Village Voice and freelance for the New York Times for several years. So
was there a formative, was there a filmmaker that maybe you distinctly remember kind of discovering or having a kind of deeper relationship sort of in your early time coming to this festival?
Well, I think I remember like screenings that were just formative. Flowers of Shanghai, screenings from the second half of the 90s, Beau Travail. Seeing those films in Alice Tully Hall was hugely important for me as a cinephile and as a young critic. And I think I always looked. I mean, just to follow up on what Kent was saying earlier, I always that hasn't changed. The fact that the New York Film Festival has always offered a snapshot of the year in cinema has always by default made a statement of what matters in contemporary world cinema, just by being so selective, just because it's restricted to 25 to 30 titles. We don't set out to make a statement with the program, but I think we end up with one, and I think that's always been the case, under Richard Pena, and certainly as it stands now.
What year was Passion by Godard? 82. Yeah. So. It might have been the very first time that I went to the New York Film Festival. Jean-Luc Godard's film Passion was showing, and it was preceded by a 40-minute avant-garde film by Erika Beckman called You the Better. And do you remember that, Marion? I have never in my life seen an audience behave so savagely. What happened? They just hated that movie with a passion. After about 10 minutes, the screaming and hollering was just unbelievable. And I saw in subsequent years at screenings of L'Argent by Robert Bresson and of Class Relations by Jean-Marie Straub and Daniel Huillet, similar reactions. But this was just like, I thought that they were about to kill her, And Richard Roud, had her get up and stand in the spotlight. But, which is a good thing because she was representing her work. They reacted to it violently. then Godard came out, and then everyone jumped to their feet. But that was an interesting thing because I think that over the years, I've noticed that audiences have become much more tolerant of the unexpected, the perhaps unpleasant by their lights, the uncomfortable. I think that that's changed over the years. And I also want to just say, in relation to what Dennis was saying, it's quite true. We pick the films and then we wind up with something that's a snapshot, and then after the fact you can look at them all and you can see how they all kind of converge. The fact that Birdman is a film about a middle-aged actor who decides that he wants to reinvent himself and go into the theater. The fact that Clouds of Sils Maria is about a middle-aged actress who's going back into the theater. They've both had, careers in action films. That's something that we didn't even think about. You only think about it after the fact. Or the fact that we have such a rich selection of New York movies. And that's interesting.
The slate certainly makes that statement, or it offers that snapshot, as you've mentioned. Before we take some questions from the audience, I want to ask each of you one more question, and that is a film that is in the festival this year that surprises you, that surprised you. You certainly go into films with expectations, but what's something that we're showing this year that is a surprise to you as a programmer?
Well, something that really surprised me, but it surprised me in the first minute when I saw it, is Seymour: An Introduction, that we just had the first screening of today and another screening Monday, I think. And when it was first given to me to look at, I looked at it on a link or on a DVD, and I'm going, who is this guy? I don't know. Oh, film Ethan Hawke made a documentary. I just sort of went in maybe kind of pissy, like, why am I watching this? And within a minute, I sort of fell in love with Seymour. And within 3 minutes, I just fell in love with Ethan Hawke's style of filmmaking and how he introduced. And I got it, and I got it, and I got it. And it was just in those minutes that it surprised me, and that I shouldn't have been surprised, but it did surprise me.
And whoever wants to go next.
I guess I would say that there are two films. They're actually showing on the same day. Horse Money by Pedro Costa and Jauja by Lisandro Alonso, who's here and our filmmaker in residence. And I think one reason both films surprise me is because they're both by filmmakers who are so single-minded and have such clearly defined projects in a way. I think in a way they're both really carved out a very interesting space between documentary and fiction to work in, and each of their, I think in both cases their careers I think represent an interest progression from film to film. Each film sort of is an answer to the one that came before, pushes a bit further, and I think these two films are, for both filmmakers, the biggest leaps of their careers. Completely surprising. Not surprising in the sense that, I think they're filmmakers we've come to expect great work from, but surprising in that moment to moment watching both films, I had no idea what to expect.
Jean-Luc Godard is always surprising. That's one thing that you can count on. But I must say, even expecting to be surprised by Jean-Luc Godard, I was taken aback by Goodbye to Language. It's one of the most. It's one of the more astonishing experiences I think I've had at the movies. And I wrote in the blurb that when we saw it in Cannes for the first time, there's a moment in the film, and when you see the film, you'll recognize it right away, that is so staggering aesthetically. He does something with the two pieces of the 3D image that's so surprising. After it was done, the entire audience in the house broke into a spontaneous round of applause. And the thing about the film that's so remarkable is that it's, on the one hand, a work with an undertow of great sadness, like a lot of Godard, but then it's also a completely free work in which he's lost all of his anxiety about whether or not to tell a story and how to tell a story, and I'm telling a story, but I'm not telling a story. That's all kind of gone. I thought that it's a completely breathtaking film, and I've seen it twice, and I look forward to seeing it about 7 or 8 more times.
So in the 10 or 15 minutes we have, I want to see what questions the audience has. And, we're here on the first full day of the festival. People are just diving into the program and also making decisions about what else they might see. What questions do you have for our programmers, either about this year's festival or about the process or about the experience overall? Gentleman in the back, hi. Oh, we have a microphone for you. Just 1 second so that not only we can hear you, but those
And I
listening.
think that's louder than our microphone.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
really is. I was wondering if there was like a list of 10 filmmakers that you guys would admit into the program without even having seen their work, like without even having seen the film that they made in the particular year.
No.
Nope.
No one gets a pass.
No. It's a reasonable question, but I mean, the real answer is, let's say that there are a lot of filmmakers who do work regularly that is highly likely to be selected, but that's quite different from what you're suggesting. So, just to make that clear. Yeah, I guess he's one of them. Well, you can probably think of the same ones, so I don't. Yeah.
Take a question here in the front. Thank you.
Yeah, I've been coming here since the days of Richard Rouse, which kind of dates me. But I've
Me
never.
too.
Me too.
Loves of a Blonde, Fireman's Ball.
Yeah.
But I've never known how. Can you walk us through the process of actually selecting a film? Does every person on the panel have a vote? Does it need to have everyone's blessing for it to be included?
He's looking at me, but I'm going to pass it off to Kent.
We discuss the films. Let's put it that way. And do we all agree on everything? Of course not. So, and if we did, that would be really dull. And I think it would also be really dull if we only picked movies that we all agreed on, because then things would get very kind of middling,
Sure.
And so I would say this year we probably more or less agreed a little more than last year. Am I right?
Maybe, yeah.
Does that sound
Yeah.
fair? But we're 5 people with informed points of view, let's say, and we're very passionate about about cinema, and so.
I have to say, and this discussion part, discussing it, it's what I love about actually being on this committee and how we select the films. Because as Kent said too, this year we probably did agree on more, but it's really great sort of when you don't agree. And I have to say for myself, I would much rather sort of put my weight and my argument behind a film that I may not get that much, but maybe 1 or 2 of my colleagues are incredibly passionate about. And that's much more interesting to me than a film that all 5 of us have seen and we go, well, that's okay. So I think that's key, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say, a lot of the times at the Cannes Film Festival, for instance, and I mean, I'm sure that the people at the Cannes Film Festival would admit this as well. What happens is the film that wins the prize is generally not far from the greatest film that's in the competition. What it winds up being is the movie that everybody agrees on. That's the problem with juries. You wind up with stuff that nobody really loves, but that everybody thinks is good. And I can think of several occasions on which that happened. I know that in '98, for instance, when you had Flowers of Shanghai, one of the greatest films of the decade, in competition, and it didn't win. And so, these are things that come up, and it didn't win for different reasons. But anyway, these are that's the danger that happens when you wind up going that way. So that's
Okay, we're going to get to a few more questions as quickly as we can. So we'll go to the gentleman on the aisle here, and then we'll try to get to a few more over here.
I might have missed this because of the noise, but you said you picked the best, what you consider to be the best films. Is there a written criteria for a definition of best? It's just something from your inner self, or what?
door number 2.
Okay, so good answer. We're going to take as many of these as we can. We'll keep the question short and the answer short as well. So maybe we can just bring the microphone down and we'll go here and then we'll go to this side as well. Thank you.
Hi, could you tell me, in terms of the films you see, the screenings, in the application process, selection process rather, how many do you see on a screen in a theater or screening room, and how many other, whatever it is, DVD and do you, do you see them all on the screen, and if not, do you think the ones you don't see on the screen somehow are at a disadvantage?
It strikes me that you're watching films on every format, every screen size.
Nobody has really statistics on this. Yeah. I'm just going to sit here and tell you my first thing when I talked about Seymour in introduction, I think I saw it on a link. So, and I don't think that has any disadvantage to it at this point.
That's something to just be very clear about. A lot of people now do not send physical DVDs if they're sending it, something that it's at that level of resolution. What happens is that you get a Vimeo link emailed to you. For those of us who have stuff like Roku and Vimeo, or Apple TV connected to our big screens at home, we're able to see it on a big screen. Or if you can, connect your computer to your screen with an HDMI cable. But that's the way that it's going more and more, right?
Yeah, I think also, but also between the five of us, we do go to film festivals, and obviously the films we see in Cannes, Berlin, Locarno, other festivals.
Yeah, Cannes is where we see a lot of stuff.
Let's try to just get to a couple more questions. Where's the microphone now? There's a woman here in the third row, and then we'll go backwards to you. Hi.
You said that you don't set out to make a statement with the films that you select, but that you wind up with one. And I was wondering, after the selection process, could you go through sort of the curating process of developing a theme for a solid body of work?
But in other words, the curating process, there's no developing of a theme. The themes arise after the selection is made, and then you look at them and you see what the themes are. But it's like we're not choosing films according to theme. Again, that would be the road to perdition, Oh, this one is, fits our theme. You know what I mean? So, in other words, what we're doing is we're saying these are the films we've selected, and then you look at them afterwards and you see the points of convergence. So that's how that works.
We'll get to just a couple more, and we're out of time. In the back corner, and then we'll do these two, and then we're done.
Hi, I just want to thank you all for giving us a little insight into your process. I have two questions. One, for the smaller films that aren't getting maybe some of the biggest buzz, could each of you maybe share a title that you think we should give a chance to, maybe go check out? That's something that we otherwise might not.
And because we're almost out of time, just a quick title from each of you, just because I want to get to.
Okay.
No pressure. No pressure.
I would say Bruno Dumont's 4-hour film Petite Cancan.
I would say go see. I might find something else in here while everybody's looking. The next screening, which is tomorrow, I think, of La Sapienza, Eugene Green's film.
Yeah, and I would say Tales of the Grim Sleeper by Nick Broomfield, which is a great, great film.
Yeah.
Last two right here in the same row, and then we have to cut it off. I'm sorry. So you, and then right next to you.
Hi. The slate's always astonishing, and I saw Asia Argento's film today, and I saw Catherine Bigelow here. I've been coming for 20 years, but I'm just curious, from your perspective, anyone's perspective, what is the disconnect, or what is the I guess why aren't there more films in the main slate by films directed by women? Sorry, had to bring it up.
What are there, 4?
Yeah.
No, 4.
Well, yeah, there's
Right.
in the main slate,
Laura
Poitras.
Laura Alice. Well, first of all, I suggest that next week, when are we doing the NYFF panel? On
Following Monday.
a week from Monday, in one of these at 7 o'clock with the New York Women in Film and Television, we're actually going to do a panel on that and talk about it, because I don't have an answer to your question. I don't know if anybody else here does, but it's like the question. And in fact, I'm actually kind of glad. Look, I think in general, I'll just say this. I think a lot of things in general are mindsets of all of us, of how we're raised and how we see things. First bunch of questions tonight were all taken by men. I think we automatically go there, and I was very happy to see we finally got to the women in the room. You know that. So next week, maybe we can start talking about it, but who else has something to say about this?
No, the only thing to say is that some years there are more films by women. And again, what we're doing is we're going by the films that we think are the best films made during the year. So, this year we have very few films from Asia. That's just the way that this year is.
One of the things we're gonna talk about in the panel next week is the relationship between films by women having presence at national, international film festivals, but also programmers, film critics. We're looking at sort of film culture and what is happening in film culture, and how do these different aspects of film culture, programming, filmmaking, film criticism, how do they talk to each other? How do they affect what we see on the screen? And Marian's going to be moderating this conversation, and so it'll be a really interesting opportunity to kind of dig deeper beyond just the headline of the number of films that play at certain festivals, but really try to look more deeply at film culture and what can be done, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years from now to lay a better foundation, or to lay a foundation for change in that regard. Last question, and then we're going to wrap it up.
How would you say the mission of the NYFF differs from that of the Tribeca Film Festival?
I would say that the Tribeca Film Festival has always been very clear about being a market, which is, they've been very clear. They have prizes. They have a lot of juries. So I don't even know whether it's the mission that's different as much as just the feeling of the festival and the way that, it came about. Which was to kind of, bring that community alive again at a moment when it really needed that. And I guess that's as clear an answer as I can give. I think that it's a very different kind of ecology, let's say.
We're going to stop the conversation here and pick up the conversation every night at 7 o'clock. Tomorrow night, we're going to have an extended conversation about Jean-Luc Godard, not only his new film, and the actress from his film, one of the actresses from his film, will be here with a number of film critics, including Richard Brody from The New Yorker. So we'll be talking about specifically Godard. For those of you who are seeing the film tonight, we'll have something more to talk about. And then every single night during the festival at 7 p.m., the talks will continue, and we invite you to come back and check them out. So thank you.
Thank you.